Travel is such an important aspect to Blindem. It really is, and safe travel at that. I've done videos on it before, I've written about it, and today I'm going to pay tribute to this lady. Joan Elizabeth Lonsdale, my mother, the daughter of Clarence Ranger, who was also a good traveller back in the 1950s as a salesman, but Mum installed in me the idea of independent travel right from the day dot.
Data Australasia. Guided by lived experience, led by you.
Hello and thanks for joining me. I'm Elise Lonsdale from Data Australasia. Yeah, look, basically, I guess you could say privileged in some ways to be, I don't know whether it's privileged or not actually, but to be born into a family where blindness was not unusual. Now, I was born in 1965, and by that time, Mum was married to somebody who, put it this way, stressful was probably a good way of describing that marriage, notwithstanding other family members, and I guess you could say quite a domineering brother-in-law. Suffice it to say, she's no longer with us. But what she did instill in me, was the desire to travel independently and to do it safely. And I'd like to discuss that. From my earliest memories, we were catching trams because she was blind. So there was no one driving. My father didn't drive, even though he was fully sighted. He had a turn in his eye and not quite sure if he'd have the wherewithal to be safe on the road, to be blunt. Suffice it to say, there was no car in our family. So we had to travel everywhere by train. We started living in Ormond, then we moved to Caulfield, we moved to South Yarra/Paran. So all around that inner city southeast of Melbourne. And then eventually, to be nearer the blind school, we moved out further east to Ashwood and Ashburton, where my sister and I guess you could say, spent our formidable years growing up. You know, the sort of 8, 9, 10 into the teens and beyond years is where, you know, if you could say where we came from or where we grew up, it would be Ashburton, almost at that time the geographical centre of Melbourne. It was easy to get to. There were 2 train lines servicing it, the Glen Waverley line, and, of course, the Alamein line on the railway line that connected us with the Camberwell and Burnley group of trains, which, of course, branches off again for Box Hill and beyond Box Hill, rather, here at Ringwood, where I now actually live, towards Lilydale and then southeast down to Belgrave. I've seen the advent of the original City Loop, which loops around Melbourne's CBD. Built, and we got to go as an open day thing. And more recently, as I've discussed and have created a video about, is the new underground, what they are now referring to as the suburban loop. Oh no, they're not the suburban. I think it's called the suburban tunnel. If anything, we actually need the tunnel or a rail line from Melbourne CBD into the airport. Sydney has one, and it's very good. I've used it many times. Sydney also has a new suburban metro tunnel that opened up in the last couple of years. Brisbane's building its Cross River Tunnel, and Melbourne now has this new one building, joining the Sunbury line in the northwest down southeast to Pakenham. And so, yeah, it will mean that you'll go underground at some station after Malvern. Before you get around South Yarra, I think it is. We didn't get to go on the underground bit there, but we did do a tour through some of the stations. So I might hop on a train one day and go out and see what it's like to actually come in and out of the tunnel. That tunnel's quite deep, much, much deeper than the original City Loop. And yes, you can actually get from one system to the other. You have a walkway between Flinders Street Station and the Town Hall Station, and from Melbourne Central, which is under the Melbourne Central Complex, part of the City Loop, to go to the State Library Station. And you actually go to one of the upper levels. There's about two mezzanine levels before you actually hit the platforms. Now, the reason I'm talking about Mum and her desire to travel is because I was catching taxis independently on my own before I was 8 years old. I remember being in a taxi travelling from Burwood, the Burwood Blind School, which was on Burwood Highway, between Station Street and Middleborough Road, to Caulfield, independently in the taxi on a Monday morning to go to school, and moreover on a Friday afternoon to come home from school. Originally, Mum would come with us, which would have been, back in those days, a massive amount of money. my Uncle Vic drove taxis and would often get the job to drive us. And that was when we were living in Paran, South Yarra, to go all the way along, really what turns out to be Toorak Road, all the way along for it to become Burwood Highway and then out to the blind school. And I was a boarding student for 4 nights a week. I remember going to the Moomba celebrations on a tram. I remember going to the eye specialist, especially from Ashburton on the tram. We used to go around to the Alfred Hospital. And I remember saying to Mum, why are we going on the train to Camberwell only to get the tram back down Burke Road to hang a right into Commercial Road and go, like, that's detouring. And I had the guts to work that out when I was about 11 years old, because we were travelling too far north for no apparent reason. Why couldn't we find another way to get there? But there wasn't really other transport to do it, to get to the beginning of Commercial Road. These days, I don't travel as much by public transport as I should, because I did catch a train into the city the other day, and that was really cool. I am on a branch line between Belgrave and Lilydale, and I do understand. I used to know the trams a lot better than I do now. And there are plenty of buses around Ringwood. We could go to Box Hill on a bus, and I have spent a little bit of time researching that. But these days, I'm time poor. I have to use taxis and Ubers, and occasionally we have to use the Blue Diamond service, as I've often spoken about, because especially in my job, when I am working, I've got a client that's in the southeastern suburbs. It's an hour away by car. It would only be God knows how much travel time if I had to do it by public transport, notwithstanding the equipment I have to take. And sometimes I have to take a box of stuff, the computer bag, and my own personal handbag. So, people often argue, oh, you being independent by taking a taxi or an Uber. No, you're not independent. Well, that's a load of codswallop, and I challenge anyone to dispute me on that. You are just as independent if you need to rely on taxis, Ubers, and other forms of road transport, because it teaches you how to use the app, or it teaches you how to ring up for a taxi. We used to have to ring up for taxis. It teaches you how to deal with it, how to direct the driver. It teaches you how to pay. It teaches you how to manage your taxi subsidy card. And sadly, if you get the guide dog refusals, it teaches you how to deal with those. So, yes, are you independent? If you catch taxis, in my opinion, you're just as independent catching a taxi or an Uber as you are stepping onto a bus, tram, train or ferry. Once again, tribute to my mum. She made us understand the Hoddle Grid, at least, which is the original CBD of Melbourne, bordered by Flinders Street to the south. To the east, it's bordered by Spring Street, Latrobe Street to the north, and Spencer Street to the west. The CBD now, of course, expands out into the Docklands to the west and the South Bank to the south across the river. But essentially, the Hoddle Grid was something we had to learn, and some of the tram routes that went through the Hoddle Grid when we were younger, how to catch a bus there and how to catch a tram and how to deal with Flinders Street Station, then Spencer Street Station, the City Loop. So you can imagine that as these new pieces of infrastructure came in during the 90s and early 2000s, we had CityLink built. Where does that go? We also had more recently this underground tunnel that's opened up. I'd like to know about that too. So, which is why I made that video on that new suburban tunnel that has just recently opened in 2025, 2026. They're just my thoughts. Travel is great. I love going to Sydney and travelling around Sydney. It's great. That's, the CBD is good, but to get out to places like the outer west, the western suburbs, I will often use the Ubers, although there are trains. The next time I go, I'll be learning those. Anyway, that's all good. And Brisbane was, I did a bit of O&M around Brisbane, and of course Perth. Perth's cool. The train system in Perth, small though it is excellent. And their bus service is pretty good. So I've learned a few cities, and it's always a lot of fun. So that's my thoughts on travelling as a vision impaired and blind person. And by the way, nothing wrong with using a cane or a guide dog either. Thanks for watching. I'm Elise Lonsdale, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.
For fast, efficient access technology training and support, call Elise Lonsdale from Australia 0448 966 533. That's 0448 966 533. Or from New Zealand on 027 315 2858. That's 027 315 2858. Data Australasia. guided by lived experience, led by you.